Title: Grave Misunderstanding. Juneteenth Pioneers Remains Mysteriously AWOL from San Diego Graveyard. TLDR. The plot thickens, literally, as the family of a Juneteenth trailblazer and successful businessman find his burial plot shockingly empty. The family's in for a ghoulish surprise, not trick or treating but grave checking, as they discover their beloved Sidney Cooper's resting place, well, unrested. The cemetery, under new ownership, is digging deep into the archives to resolve this whodunit. When you think you've seen it all, life, or in this case, death, throws a curveball. The family of Sidney Cooper, a beloved Juneteenth advocate and black businessman, were expecting a somber event, but the cemetery offered them a morbid mystery instead. When it was time to say their last goodbyes to Thelma, Sidney's wife, they found her would-be neighbor, aka Sidney himself, wasn't home. Now, let's unpack this. Who checks out of their own grave, right? Here's the kicker. Greenwood Memorial Park and Mortuary, the burial ground, relayed this spooky news to the Coopers, stating they were as clueless about Sidney's whereabouts as the family. Can you imagine the staff scratching their heads, muttering, "I swear we left him right here." So, are we talking about a case of grave forgetfulness or something more sinister? Lana Cooper Jones, the couple's daughter, described the experience as like losing her father all over again. And we thought double jeopardy was just a thing, in law. What's worse, having to grieve once, or having your second round of grief served with a side of mystery? The cemetery, meanwhile, is trying to dig up answers rather than bodies for a change. Their statement mentioned that the misplacement happened 20 years ago, under previous ownership. Convenient, isn't it? New owners, old problems. They're committed to reuniting the separated couple as soon as possible. Is this a grave sitcom or what? At Turned Up News, we want you to think and question. After all, we're not just handing you a bunch of facts, we're handing you a narrative that's meant to stir your thoughts. So, let's not bury the question any longer. What happens when your eternal rest gets disturbed? How would you feel if you were in the Cooper family's shoes? And how does a cemetery lose track of who's buried where? Isn't that, like, Cemetery Management 101? Disclaimer: this article is intended to relay facts from a news story and stimulate conversation. It does not provide advice or recommendations. Got thoughts? Drop them in the comments. Let's stir the pot of this peculiar, grave why situation together. And remember, in this narrative, what would Sidney make of his sudden, posthumous fame?